All right, today we're going to dive into a pivotal moment in South Asian history. It's one of those stories that's often overlooked, but trust me, it is packed with intrigue, courage, and a really profound question about what freedom truly means. This is the story of the liberation of Gilgit Baltistan. The date you need to lock in your mind is November 1st, 1947. This is the anchor point for our entire story. See, in the chaotic aftermath of the British Raj collapsing, the people of this remote, mountainous region decided, you know what, we're going to take our destiny into our own hands. But here's the real tension, the question we're going to explore. Was this a genuine, homegrown uprising for self-determination, or was it a calculated move in the great geopolitical chess match between these brand new nations? As we're about to see, the answer is way more complex than you might think. So let's start where it all began, with the people themselves. Because long before any outside players got involved, that desire for freedom, it was already burning bright right there in the region. Okay, so picture this. The British are leaving, and they hand control of the Gilgit Agency back to the Maharaja of Kashmir. The problem? A huge one. The people living there, who were overwhelmingly Muslim, had absolutely zero desire to be part of his state. They saw a completely different future for themselves, a future they wanted to choose. And this wasn't just some spontaneous riot, not at all. This was an organized plan. Right at the center of it all was Captain Mirza Hassan Khan, a local officer who had the complete loyalty of his troops. For months, he and other Muslim officers were quietly coordinating, laying the groundwork for a revolution with one very clear goal: self-determination. And don't just take my word for it. This quote comes directly from the Dogra governor himself, Brigadier Gansara Singh. He could see what was happening. He recognized that this coordination between local officers was a credible, organized threat to his rule. The administration absolutely knew a storm was brewing. And this all leads to a single, fateful moment. Tensions finally boil over, and an order is given to arrest Captain Hassan Khan. Now, if they'd gone through with it, this could have completely decapitated the movement. But the governor, he hesitates. He cancels the arrest, worried it would just make things worse. That one decision basically sealed the fate of Dogra rule and left the leader of the revolution free to make his move. With their leadership still intact, the revolutionaries acted fast, and what they pulled off was pretty remarkable. They gave birth to a brand new, independent state. So on the night of October 31st, the plan swings into action. The Gilgit Scouts, a local paramilitary force, just surround the governor's house. There was no long, drawn-out fight. By the next morning, it was done. The governor surrendered, and just like that, almost 100 years of rule from Kashmir was over. And they didn't just create a power vacuum. They immediately set up a provisional government, the Aburi Hukumat. Just look at the names. These were all local leaders. You've got Shah Rais Khan as president, and of course Captain Mirza Hassan Khan as the commander-in-chief. They had actually done it. They had created their own independent republic. But this is where the story takes a sharp, unexpected turn. The victory was real, absolutely, but it wasn't the whole picture. There was another major player on the board, a British officer named Major William Brown. And his motives? Well, they were about to change everything. For a long, long time, Major Brown was painted as the hero who delivered Gilgit to Pakistan. But you have to ask, right? Was he really a liberator fighting for local people, or was he an agent playing a much bigger geopolitical game? His own words are pretty telling. He said he wanted to make military history. His goal, as he stated it, wasn't about the specific rights of the people of Gilgit Baltistan. It was about a broader, religiously framed mission to save the Muslims of Kashmir. That was his agenda, not necessarily theirs. And this right here is absolutely key. On the very same day of liberation, Brown sends a telegram. He carefully, strategically describes the whole thing as a spontaneous pro-Pakistan uprising. Now that wording was brilliant, in a way. It gave Pakistan the legal cover it needed to eventually step in, and this is the most important part. It completely erased the names and the months of planning by local leaders like Captain Hassan Khan. And Hassan Khan, he saw this manipulation for exactly what it was. He later wrote this very telling line: "Cunning Brown thinks of me to be an obstruction in his way." Now, why would the local hero be an obstruction? Well, because Hassan Khan's vision was for real self-governance, and that was a direct clash with Brown's grander plan. And here it is, the core conflict laid bare. For Hassan Khan, the goal was local self-determination. His loyalty was to his people, and his vision was for an independent state, or, at least an equal partnership. But for Brown, the objective was geopolitical. His loyalties were to British and Pakistani interests, and his vision was a strategic accession. Two men, two profoundly different ideas for the future. So, with these two competing visions, what happened next? Well, this brings us to the aftermath, a period that turned that triumphant promise of liberation into something way more complicated and, for a lot of people, deeply disappointing. Just look at how fast it all unraveled. November 1st, they declare their independence. Just 15 days later, on November 16th, a political agent from Pakistan shows up, and that independent government they fought for, it's immediately dissolved. 15 days. That's how long the republic lasted. And that one decision led to this. More than 70 years of being stuck in a constitutional gray zone. Because of the much larger, still unresolved Kashmir dispute, the people of Gilgit Baltistan weren't given full provincial status. So for decades, this meant they were ruled directly from the capital, without a real voice or representation in their own government. And what about the hero of our story, Captain Mirza Hassan Khan? The tragic irony is that the man who organized the liberation later spent years in prison. His vision of self-determination was seen as a threat, a clash with the bigger geopolitical strategy. The liberator ended up becoming a voice of dissent. So what does all this mean today? Well, the events of 1947 cast a very, very long shadow. And the legacy of that unfulfilled promise is a struggle that, in many ways, continues to this very day. But through it all, it is so important to remember who the true agents of this story were. It wasn't just one or two guys. It was Captain Mirza Hassan Khan, President Shah Rais Khan, Subadar Major Babur Khan, the Gilgit Scouts, the soldiers, and ultimately, it was the people of Gilgit Baltistan. This was their revolution. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. It's the dilemma at the very heart of this story. When a people rise up and win their own freedom, who gets to decide what happens next? The people themselves, or the bigger, more powerful forces of history and politics? It's definitely something to think about.